Namaste, Vanakkam, Namaskaram. You're watching Sunday Sadhana, your favorite Hindu magazine program on SABC2. November 16th marked 151 years since the arrival of the first Indian indentured labourers to South Africa. And today we commemorate the arrival of our forebears with this special episode. We begin by visiting the Aryan Benevolent home in Maritzburg, and this is followed by a visit to one of Johannesburg's oldest temples, the Melrose Shree Subramaniar Alayam. When our forefathers grew old and could no longer fulfill their purpose of labour or return to India, many of them became destitute. With the vision and compassion of a few elders, the Aryan Benevolent Society was founded in the 19th century, thus becoming the first establishment to assist with our community's aged. Today, Sunday Sadhana takes a look at the ABH in Pietermaritzburg Street, Maritzburg, where the age-old Hindu culture of caring and respecting our elders still continues.
In the year 1914, a labourer was roaming the streets of Pietermaritzburg, homeless and no place to live. He was referred to by the police and he was taken to court, and the magistrate asked that the Indian community care for him. There was an organization known as the Aryan Youth League at that time, who were very active. And this group of boys, or young men rather, looked at the situation and had a lot of vision and realized that many more people could get abandoned and left homeless and destitute. And so they founded the Aryan Benevolent Society. Well, if you look at how our forefathers came into this country, the majority of them were Hindus. And of course, you know that they came over from India seeking greener pastures. And they were extremely shocked and disturbed when they came here and they found that what they were told and what they actually discovered was very, very different. And they had some very difficult times. And the first thing they decided to do, to fulfill their spiritual aspirations, I should say, they made enormous sacrifices to ensure that places of worship were established. Barely 25 years after they had landed here, they had established temples. And our forefathers were very, very, very conscious of their religion, conscious of what it taught. And one of it said was that service is worship. And they looked at each other, although they came from a foreign land, they looked at each other as brothers and helped each other, catered for each other. Education and religion went hand in hand. They realized that karma yoga purifies their heart and really and truly gives them an opportunity to make an offering to God. That is karma yoga. So they then, even if they earned 25 cents, what was called 2 shillings and 6 pence at that time, they gave 6 pence of that money so that others can benefit from their contribution. And they did it without expecting anything in return, no reward they wanted. So this organization feels that we are actually serving God when we serve our people. And it is because of their coming to South Africa with religion intact that they handed down to us. And one thing unique about Hinduism is that it is all-embracing. We see God in everything, and the all-pervasive God, and we worship God in our own fellow brethren, kith and kin. Hinduism is just a name given for convenience to our religion. It is a way of life. It is something that we follow, and we see that oneness in everything. We haven't changed the vision of the founders, and therefore we want to perpetuate that vision, but just grow it.
Welcome back to Sunday Sadhana. Founded by the early immigrants to the then Transvaal, the Melrose Shree Subramaniar Alayam in Johannesburg reminds us of our remarkable heritage. Regarded as the oldest Murugan temple outside of India, the Alayam is a national monument which still lives on with fervent popularity even today.
The temple goes back many years. Around about 1870 is the dates that we have, where the temple goes back to.
Well, the reason for building the temple was to find a place to worship Lord Muruga. And they started worshipping Lord Muruga here as a veil initially. So they started praying to him in his form as the veil.
The laborers from the laundry who used to work there had actually started the temple, and they've built a wooden and an iron structure in terms of the temple, and that's where they used to worship.
Yeah, I think that we actually were fortunate that our forefathers were so focused on our ancient ways of worship, and they maintained this. During the apartheid years, it was very tough to get priests from India and from outside of South Africa. But they, as our forefathers, did this for charity and without expecting anything in return. And they were the focus of keeping these traditions through the oral forms of tradition, and they taught youngsters who then carried on and so forth. So we were very fortunate that at that time we were able to preserve these ways of worship. During the apartheid times, the land was, and so people tried to repossess the land and to take it back under government rule and to auction off the land. And when this was done, our forefathers had gone to this auction, and the bidding process had started, and everything was going on well, and people had bid for the land. Our forefathers stood up and said that those that take over this land of our god Muruga will be cast with all his fury. And immediately the bidding stopped and everyone pulled out of the auction, and the land was sold for £1. But the land could not be sold back to Indian people due to the Group Areas Act. So fortunately we had a white man that had taken over the land on our behalf, and he had held the land in his name until the end of the Group Areas Act.
In spite of all the challenges and the apartheid era and people being forcibly moved from this area, it was the power of Lord Muruga that today we're still here 140 years later at the Melrose Temple, and we're still going from strength to strength.
We know that, and so we know that Gandhi had come here during his time in South Africa, and his time while he was a lawyer in Johannesburg, and he had meditated quite a bit here. We believe that prior to Madiba going on his Rivonia trial, he had come here to pray, and immediately after coming out of Robben Island, he had come back here to pray.
Today we have a temple that holds more than 400 people. So in terms of structure, it's definitely grown. It's the energy, it's the bhakti, it's what you feel in this temple when you are here. People say that God is in your heart, which is true. But I believe that like we all have a home, God also has a home. And if we want to go visit God at his home, this is where we need to be, at the temple. So when we come to temple, let's go and visit God. Even though, yes, he's with us all the time in our hearts, in our homes, but he also has a home. And that is one of the reasons why people should continue going to temple and continue our heritage.
We want Melrose Temple to always be a place where everyone can come, and everyone can come and experience the peace and happiness that we have experienced here, whatever your religion or whatever your faith is. Not to come and necessarily pray in the way in which we pray, but to experience the atmosphere and the energy that comes with visiting Melrose Temple.
If you just look at where we've come from over 140 years ago, in terms of the apartheid era and the challenges that we've had to go through in terms of wanting to take the land away, in terms of the building, there's challenges all the time, every day. And today, 140 years later, we're still standing very strong with the support of all the devotees, I think, throughout the world, if I can say that.
Thank you for joining us and sharing in our history. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Always aim at complete harmony of thought and word and deed. Always aim at purifying your thoughts and everything will be well." And look how well it's all turned out. Until next week, Om Shanti.